show. It becomes almost like a empathy gymnastics where you feel so much, where you want to give so much, but you only have so many seats, right? And there's only so many people that you can bring to the table to have their voice heard. So welcome to the Tragedy Academy, a show created to bridge societal divides in a judgment-free zone using candor and humor. My name is Jay. I'm joined today by John Graham, 3 times USA memory champion, Grandmaster memory entrepreneur, and mentors high performers, including a world record holder. How you doing today, John?
Yeah, I'm a little sleep deprived. I've got a newborn baby, but I'm doing really, really well. Happy to be here.
Shut the front door. I have a newborn coming on around the 11th of August. So
Yeah.
This is what I have to look forward to. Sleep deprivation, correct?
Yeah. Oh man. When you're in the thick of it, you're like, will this ever end? But I know it'll end soon.
So I like to look at things in manageable blocks, and I also like to look at things in who's done it before me and who's been capable of surviving it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at this particular scenario, first of all, I can tell you there's a lot of people that have handled having a kid up through whatever time frame, right? And we know that there's some real dodos that have allowed people to survive or have brought children into the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm telling my wife, I'm like, all right, look, I'll give her examples. I'm like, you know this person? Like, they did it. And she's like, yeah, I guess you're not wrong. I'm like, so there we go.
Yeah.
Right. And then I look at the time cycle. I'm like, all right, these babies sleep like 18 hours a day, but it's in increments. And I'm like, usually like 3 hours. I'm like, okay, I can handle that. 3-hour blocks. All I have to do is prepare for a 3-hour block, a 3-hour block.
I like your thinking. I did the same thing, but don't tie yourself too much into expectation, because then you get your third child is the one that doesn't sleep. And that's our current scenario. She has to be held to fall asleep.
Oh,
so
no.
it's
I mean,
nice,
that's good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't get anything done that you think you will. So.
Oh, man. Well, see, I'm fortunate. Our studio is here in my home, and I also, my wife works from home. We have a pretty large place, so we'll both be here throughout the day. My mother-in-law is nearby, so we're going to have support from an Italian farm, born lady that is able to cook your entire kitchen in 10 minutes.
Good.
So I'm excited to have them here, and I'm excited for you, a newborn child. That's something to celebrate.
Yeah. Well, cheers to us, and cheers to you for the upcoming. And
thank you.
We're both going to be amazing dads for sure.
I believe so. So, John, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got here, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, I'm known as the 3-time USA memory champion. So people are very curious about that. Some people assume I have a naturally born memory, photographic memory, something like that. And it's actually the exact opposite. I learned all the techniques that made me a champion. And that, it was a lot of hard work and application, but it was literally 10 years ago, 2014, I read a book called Moonwalking with Einstein. So I'd already graduated school. I was 27 years old and I read this book. So I didn't get to use it on all my studies. I was a pretty good student, but
Isn't that crappy how that works out? It's always in retrospect. Yeah. It's kind of like with audio engineering now. They're coming out with all these AI, systems that'll clean up audio for you. And I'm like, what? Like only 5 years ago when I started this, I felt like I had like a chisel and a hammer.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden guys are showing up, they're like hitting one button and they're like, hello, how are you? And I'm like, no, this isn't fair.
It's not
so
fair.
I get it. It comes after the beginning.
What the benefit for you is all the hard work, discipline, perseverance. You have that, whereas the newer generation, they have it too easy sometimes, So it's like the adversity, isn't there. It might be there for different things, but yeah, so that's your advantage. I read this. I started right away. I competed in the world championship 6 months after reading that book. Why not, right? Because
I love that though. You embraced it. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Well, there was an award called the Grandmaster of Memory that you had to memorize at the World Championships. You had to memorize 10 decks of cards in 1 hour. That was one event. You had to memorize 1,000 digits in order in another event. And you had to memorize a deck of cards in under 2 minutes, one deck in under 2 minutes in the other event. And I was like, I could do that,
I could do that.
Yeah.
To me, I'm sitting here like this. This sounds so ridiculously unfathomable. Like if somebody offered me this opportunity, like as they kept adding, as you kept going, I was like, no, and double no. And now this is a joke. This is absurdity. And so you had to memorize all that in the first go.
Yep. There's 10 events. 3 of those events were those key events that I had to, reach those benchmarks. And yeah, it sounds insane. Like to the average person and me at the time, I was like, this is insane. But when you actually start the techniques and learn what the mind wants and learn how to store information in order, and it makes so much sense. And, for example, 2019 was my best year. I memorized a deck of cards. I looked at a full shuffle deck of cards for 21 and a half seconds and memorized the order. That shows you like what's possible with the mind, right? What's possible if you take these to the depths.
I completely get what you mean when you say the possibility of the mind or the capabilities that we don't understand that exist.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get into some very deep conversation. And I'm excited about that. And on its surface, the discussion we're having is these really cool techniques that show up, and allow you to maintain or retain information over a short period of time in large quantities, so to speak. Using, is it mnemonics? Is that how it's?
Sure, mnemonics,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Techniques.
And not necessarily that's what you're doing right now, or that's the only thing you do or something like that. But I just know in general, that's the term used for what I used to do in the military for like boards and things like that. And then you realize when I was reading through this, these techniques, I was like, oh, well, I've been doing this since the dawn of time. And it was, things like, how to treat for shock. And I always had something in the back of my head that was, as soon as I saw it, it's Pelkrin. It's position, elevate, locate, or, locate, position, elevate, loosen, climatize, reassure, and notify. It's always there in my head. And I've done that my entire life. Grabbed, like even my passwords. Like my passwords are long, ridiculous sentences with, different punctuation and capitalization and use of like special keys in ways that I will only remember by doing it with a sentence. And I'm guessing that's something similar to mnemonics from what I could understand.
Yeah, that's a strategy of acronym where you're chunking a sentence into like the first letters of that sentence into a password, right? So it's easier. You're making something memorable by making it a story or an association to link it, right? You're making it condensed and then you're associating it with something to remember it. Yeah, so it's beautiful technique.
It's me fighting my ADHD and my own memory issues that I've had throughout life. Okay. And I feel like it's a way to store things longer.
Yep.
For me.
Yep. 100%.
So let's talk about what having a great memory or these techniques can reveal to somebody over time, say with scenarios like synchronicity or pattern recognition and things of that nature, and how it allows you to access a different space in the mind and give you a different perspective on reality.
Interesting question. I mean, what comes to me is I'm constantly looking at information and turning it into an association, something I already know. So for example, numbers, how the heck would you remember numbers, right? You have to turn a number into something meaningful. So I use a language called the major system. And follow me here. Each digit is a different sound, consonant sound. So 0 is S, 1 is T, 2. So I'm 3 numbers at a time, I'm forming into words based on the consonant sounds, right? It's like learning a very simple language. And I turn that word into an image, right, to store that number, right? So 357 is milk, M, L, K. Those 3 sounds make milk. So what I'm getting to is whether it's a word, whether it's a deck of cards, numbers, I'm looking at that information, image, like even your name, Jay. blue jay, boom, image, right? Association. So the more you train your brain to do that, the more you are able to notice patterns, right? Because you're seeing the world in a different way. You're actively looking at the world. So if I'm looking at sequences of numbers, I can notice patterns. I was just teaching someone yesterday to memorize poker charts, like scenarios of fold and
Mm.
raise and all this, like insane. And we're just seeing patterns in the charts because we're breaking it down and looking for those ways to chunk it, like you're doing with acronyms. So I think just by forcing yourself to look at the world in a different way, look at information in a different way, you're seeing patterns all over the
Mm.
place.
The forced recognition, I like to show the core or the way that it's actually mindfulness.
Yeah.
Without even realizing it's mindfulness. I think that there's so many different approaches to how we can have these epiphanies or understandings about reality. Some people will come to an understanding via meditation. Some people will come to it via some kind of traumatic event, or some through plant medicine. But we all have the ability to recognize synchronistic things, patterns, and in doing so, it allows us to, I like to say, escape the memory, right? And I say that because it puts you into a separate bubble. And it allows you to recognize things within that bubble while ignoring all the things that are actually non-existent and staying in that moment and wrapping yourself in that moment.
Sure.
Right. And that suspended state for me gives me the opportunity to start to see that what I choose to make my reality or my memories is how I construct my day-to-day living. And if I can maintain that bubble, almost like a short-term memory bubble, and operate within that and only access the outside when I need to, it allows me to recognize that there's a lot of cyclical, not needed thinking.
Sure.
That's stored up, and emotions and different feelings attached to all that stuff that's not there when I'm trying to live within that bubble. I like it, use it for creativity, things like that. And as soon as I allow it to come back in, it's a whole different world. So with someone like yourself, I've listened to some of your different interviews. I like to see how past people we've had on the show have had different approaches in their life to where they're at this stage, and then see someone else coming in from another direction, but still have those core items that they're focusing on. And I gotta say, for me, it's always been now. Each time I see someone moving towards a recognition of reality, this collective understanding, it's through mindfulness. I don't honestly say that your memorization is probably a form of meditation.
Yeah.
If you were to ask
100%,
me,
100%.
It seems that. Do you feel that on that line that memorization has allowed you to form a meditation practice?
Sure. I mean, meditation is a form of focus, right? And so absolutely, when I'm memorizing, when I'm in the zone, I'm meditating. I'm channeling my focus onto something. And, whether it's focusing on your breath, focusing on numbers and memorizing, it gives you an avenue to be in the moment, be in the present moment that you talk about, right? And that's why any of us chase that moment of being in the zone, because it's so pure and all the outside worries go away. But it absolutely is. Beyond that, though, right? Because there's deeper beyond just the meditative state, right? My story really starts at that first championship, trying to get that Grandmaster. I knew memory techniques. I probably could have gotten those scores. I didn't, spoiler alert. I bombed. Because
you bombed at your first memory championship.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah. Boo. Of course. I would expect that.
And I had someone who had succeeded in everything in life mentally, like school was a breeze for me. And so when I bombed, I was like, it was a wake up call. But the reason I bombed, and not to blame anything, it was my greatest discovery, is the pressure. Sitting in that first event, because there's 10 events, my heart was beating out of my chest. I almost got up and left. It was so intense. So I
Mm.
had to learn how to handle, like you talk about, you're being in this bubble of focus, but then all the demons want to come in, like, and ruin the day. Like literally, they're in your
Knocking
head.
on the glass.
They're knocking on your head. They're messing you. They're saying you suck. All this training for nothing. You wasted your time. Here you are in front of everyone. Like all this stuff, and you're feeling it viscerally, like not just physically but emotionally. That uncomfortable emotion. So all of it overwhelmed my system, and I had to learn. Like I wanted to continue in memory because people were helping me with the techniques, but I had to overcome the pressure. That was my mindset at the time. I don't like to say overcoming pressure anymore because I see it in a different way. And it's what's helped me transcend that. But how do we not only meditate and be in the moment, but how do we overcome the demons and the things that try to invade? And that was my story because this pressure at the time, I didn't know it, but it was anxiety. It was chronic anxiety. It developed into panic attacks. And those are some of my demons that I had to overcome. So in my ascent to the top of memory, in entrepreneurship and as a father, all of my stuff came to the surface. And I didn't know what it was. I thought I needed a supplement to handle it. I thought I needed a meditation. I thought I needed to go for a walk, all the stuff, but it wasn't working. And so my story begins with figuring out what to do to move through this.
So what do you do when you figure out that you have to operate within a separate bubble from that?
Yeah.
And what does it bring you to realize?
Well, what I first started trying was other competitors were trying to add pressure to their training, like called chaos training. And I eventually started doing push-ups, holding my breath, listening to podcasts loudly on my ear, filling my bladder up so I had to pee and training in that chaos, right? To try to it helped me win. It helped me win.
I believe it. I'm not laughing at the techniques, but I'm also laughing at the techniques.
It is. It's a funny.
Like the that we will do as humans to be able to obtain a feat is insanity.
100% agree with that. And I look at it now and I'm glad I did it. But one thing I didn't know as this was happening, of course, my achiever mind wanted all this stuff. But what was happening under the surface was I started allowing this stuff to happen, like letting this stuff in versus having a bubble and nothing, don't touch me. I'm in this bubble, right? Because a lot of flow teachers talk about blocking out your distractions and all this nonsense and to be in a flow state, but that's performative flow. Performative flow means you have to pump yourself up to a certain state or do something outside of yourself with supplements or whatever to get yourself in a zone. But your body has a natural ability to be in the zone. Flow just means non-resistance. So if I let this stuff in and don't resist it, which is not easy, if you can let the demons in or the voice in your head or voices in your head, whatever you want to call it, the doubts, whatever, and we all have it, by the way, our minds are all neurotic.
Absolutely.
It's an ego. It's normal. Everyone has one. The emotions are
persona.
Normal too. What's that?
It's a persona.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. We've created it. And if we understand it, it can help ourselves free ourselves from it, right? If you understand what the voice in your head is, then you can look at it. Then you can just let it happen instead of believing it's you. And that's why a lot of people struggle with it. Most people, because they believe it's them, they suck so much into it instead of sitting back and watching it, understanding what it is. And we could talk about what it is. But I started allowing this stuff to happen. Okay, cool. My heart's racing. Okay, cool. I feel butterflies in my stomach. Okay, cool. My mouth's going dry. And just letting it happen. And that was the start of learning what the real root of anxiety was and overcoming it.
I absolutely love that. That you were able to come to this realization, to give yourself the ability to walk through. I like to use silk as the thoughts, the invading things that are preventing me from moving forward, and almost like you would cast an image onto it. And initially I would stop at all of these various walls that I came to realize were simply silks that I could walk through that had no bearing over me unless I allowed it to.
Right.
If I gave it reality, if I gave it a concrete wall, then that's what it would be, no matter what, because my mind is powerful at the same time. It is so strong that it can convince me that silk is concrete, right? And I have to remind myself that it's not and walk through it. And that's the mindfulness piece, because we will get entranced by the image on the concrete. So much so that we'll forget it's silk and we'll fight a wall. Fight a wall. As nonsensical as that sounds, it is actually what's happening in the human mind when it's taking on anxiety, panic, past issues that have now manifested as the mind's ability to protect you in weird ways, like sweaty palms and panic attacks and all these visceral feelings all poking in at you. But really, it's like having the silk wadded up and snapped at you like a towel when it doesn't need to be, right? You can literally sit there and live amongst all those thoughts, all those pressures, and let them be part of you. Have lunch with your lion. Sit down. Let it be your friend. Understand that when I do this, it swats at me. Maybe, I have a different perspective and approach to things. So that's kind of how I've liked to imagine it over time. And my process has been through meditation, right? Meditation allowed me to, and not conventional, but in varying forms until I found my own, right? And it started out with breath work and it ended up coming back to breath work, right? Because I needed that metronome in order to hit my flow state. I needed to be able to observe, right? And I think that's the key to everything that we're saying, is being an observer of self, an observer of reaction, and almost like putting yourself in a cartoon character role. For me,
I like that.
Where I watch what my cartoon character decides it's going to be that day, which engagement, which scenario is going to be the one of the day. That's going to be my cartoon moment until I back out of it like an old 80s aha video and come walking back into that. Was a great reference, by the way. If you didn't get that, you're too young.
I'm too young.
Oh, man. Somebody just please make me feel good and say, Jay, that was a great reference after you listen to the show.
I believe it was.
Right? It was amazing. So tell me about how this has impacted your life with regard to those demons, the anxiety, the panic attacks, or depression that can come from fear of anxiety. It's a snake eating its own tail.
Yeah, the fear of the fear is what I had too when panic happens. That first gateway, you explained it so beautifully, the mind. Right, the mind is like this gatekeeper of trying to keep you safe. Right, it's an illusion, and you described it beautifully. We have to be able to sit in that. That's the first step, right? That's the baseline. That should be a baseline for everyone, and do the best you can. Right, it's very, very difficult of just being aware of this stuff. So then I took the next step, because I realized and I knew the truth at that point that this is an emotional root issue. Because everyone tries to treat anxiety and panic as mental health, right? And the mind is involved, but the root hidden, the mind protecting it, is the emotional root, the feeling, the sensation that comes up. So it's not a mental root issue. The mind, again, is protecting. So once you're aware of the mind, cool, you see the demons, you watch them, it's terrifying. Yep, all the things, because we're human. Now you step into the emotional realm. And what I discovered, I didn't discover this. I'm not some guru. People have known about this for thousands of years, but we have stuffed emotions inside of us over time. So every experience that we've ever had that we couldn't handle at that moment is still inside of us. And those moments are being, like you said, poked. I use that word all the time. So if someone cuts you off in traffic, you get poked, anger comes up. You get a bad email, you get poked, anxiety, whatever. They're poking old stuff that's coming to the surface, right? Think of like people who need drinks. I'm not judging here, but if you need a drink, you drink to take off the edge. What's the edge?
Keyword is need.
This is the edge. Yeah. This is the edge, the stuff that's coming up. We all know what the edge is. It's emotional, but the mind holds it in. So the only way to freedom of anxiety, chronic anxiety, panic, is to let this stuff process out. And the only way to do that is to sit in those feelings and let them do whatever they want to do. And I mean that. And I know, like, oh my gosh, that's terrifying thought for some people, but that only way out is through. Because if we don't feel the feelings that haven't been processed out of our being, the anxiety is just going to keep happening. The panic's just going to keep building. These things will keep happening in your life, and you'll think it's a relationship. You'll think it's an email. You think it's work. You'll think it's something else. But no, it's stuff we've decided to store our whole lives that we haven't resolved. And so I started taking the step of, yes, watching the mind, the demons, but then bringing my attention from the mind into my body and feeling all this nastiness that I've held my whole life and letting it happen. And slowly, over the course of a few weeks, freeing myself from that.
That's a beautiful explanation of how you go through that process. And everybody listens to the show will know that there are some analogies that I just absolutely love and hold on to because they do explain things at a very granular level. And what I like to point out is you do store things just like you said. And I like to envision that each person starts out as a length of a rope, right? They have nothing wrong with them. They are just a singular piece of rope. They're capable of anything, right? They're limitless. And as you go through life, you're faced with various hurdles or situations, trials, tribulations, whatever they are, right? And you have a choice at that moment. You can either A, go through it, or B, tie a knot in your rope.
Sure.
And move on. And what happens is you continue to go through life, death of a family member, loss of a job, being, made fun of, whatever it is. Not. And what happens to a length of rope when you tie knots in it over and over again? Becomes a useless wadded ball of shit, right? It's incapable of doing anything that it wants to, right? Or that its purpose is.
Yeah.
And for me, I think meditation allows me to sit down with that length of rope and find each one of those problems or past issues that are causing that emotional retention, finding it and undoing that knot, and then getting to another one. But the thing is you have to sit down with your rope. And when you're unraveling that knot, you have to relive it. You have to understand it. You have to see why, and you have to admit to how you contributed, right? Through your own ego, whatever it is, but you get to unravel them. And what's beautiful is everybody knows when you're untying a large knot, there comes a point within that knot as you're unraveling it that it all starts to fall out and becomes super easy. And you get to pull the long pieces and you start to see things and it gets faster and you get to enjoy almost like an ASMR scenario at the end of the knot because you know that you're free again, right? But this time you're just as capable. You still have that same length of rope. And now not just are you able to do things yourself, but you're back to being able to help others. Because no matter how hard you want to help people, if you're a wadded knot, you're useless to them. All you are is a spectator at that point, right? Because you're not going to contribute anything. So I like to think of that as my way of storing and then not being able to function and then how to untie it and find my way forward as a new length of rope.
Yeah. I love that. Like, seriously, that's beautiful. That's a very good way of describing that. And I'll even add to that is, like you said, like, when you relax your body, loosen that rope, some of the knots start coming undone, without your effort. And even like you untie this knot, another one comes untied too. And that jostling.
Realizations.
Yeah. Realizations, epiphanies. They will come. And they only come through moving through those knots, because we try to mentally force ourselves to overcome limiting beliefs and barriers, when in fact, when we unravel that knot and feel that emotion, we get the realization, because those knots are codes. They're intelligence. They're giving you the next breakthrough.
You have to live through it.
Yeah.
Animals give us the biggest clues. A dog will not hold on to what happened to it, right? We see it all the time. When you take the leg of a dog, what does it do? It runs off with 3. What's the human do? They write a book, right? It can become a persona. I'm not saying that people that have lost their limbs or, they're crybabies or some crap like that. That's a traumatic experience. But the example is that they live so much in the now, they do not allow the absence of something to impact how they move forward.
Sure.
Right? They just get better at being 3-legged, and that's it. We will store, hold on to, or create a whole new mask to wear post-trauma. We'll put it on. It'll be a new way for people to look at us. They won't see that flaw that is now covered with my kiss star around my left eye or whatever, some crap like that I've drawn on there, so you don't look at the right eye that's lazy, right? This is the weird things we'll do, right? And we see it in pictures. Go look at pictures of yourself, find your flaw that you love, and see how many pictures you're standing in a manner where that's not as noticeable.
Sure.
It's so simple. And here's the thing. You're the only one that gives a shit about that, because everybody else is thinking about their own floppy ears or big nose or weird mole or whatever feature it is, right? That's another thing that came to my realizations through meditation is like, dude, nobody gives a shit what I'm doing.
No.
They care what they're doing because they're in their own movie theater.
No. We're all concerned
right?
about
I'm making cameos and I think I'm a star.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
So how do you apply this understanding to your day-to-day life now and through your interactions?
Yeah. So that rope is a beautiful analogy. The rope has in it, always wanting to run through it, energy, happiness, love. Like there is inside of us all times that when we're born, we have happiness flowing through us, love flowing through us already. Nothing in the outside world can touch that until all of a sudden we become tainted and kinked and tied up, right? So what that means is we try to use the outside world to hit our stuff, to make us feel happy. So we try to win awards. Look, I got awards behind me. I try to make more money. I try to, look pretty. I try all this stuff externally to be happy, and it never ever satisfies. We always want
short term.
Always want more. So what does that tell us?
Short term high.
Yeah. It tells us that nothing outside of us can fulfill us. If you understand that rope has energy in it at all times, a life force, a chi, a spirit, whatever you want to call it,
a capability,
a
purpose,
at all times. But with all the kinks in the way, you can't feel that. So if we can unkink ourselves or untie the knots or release the emotion, whatever you want to call it, that's the path to happiness, freedom, fulfillment. Is that feeling is in you at all times, and you don't realize that. So talking or not, let's use this example, winning a championship and me staring at the wall can have the same amount of life force, happiness, bliss, energy. The same experience if all my stuff is out of the way. So my path, my life now is I'm using life, the external world, to poke all this stuff out of me, to free myself.
Hmm. Interesting. So life's trials and tribulations become spearheads to understanding. Each one that hits you gives you tested metal and allows you to know what they're taking or poking or making a target.
Sure.
That's an amazing way to approach it, utilizing what will already happen, right?
Right.
We know that it's there if we're utilizing those crossroads as waypoints instead of issues and places to get lost when they're really just part of the journey. And I think that memory does serve a purpose in that when you look back at those intersections in life where you came to understandings, where you had epiphanies or a trial or a tribulation, you may not have the understanding at the moment, but the beauty is with memory and further traversing this life or that road, you can look back at the map, and the map will have these little lights at each one of those intersections for lessons learned, good, bad, and different, right? And that's what you should be taking with you into the future, right? Not the pain, the sorrow, and the anxiety, the panic, the depression, right? You take forward the realization that you've understood your tested metal, right? You're actually capable of living through things, and those things have only proven your strength, not your weakness. That's just how I like to approach it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to look at it. And I look at it very similar. I even look at one of the realizations I've had in the last year or so is not only are this, like you like to call them knots, right? I look at them like these dense pockets of emotion, right? That inside has energy that wants out. Inside has codes. Inside has intelligence, whatever you want to think of it. Energy.
Boba tea.
Yeah, boba tea. There you go. You burst it open and it explodes out the flavor,
and it
right?
makes it taste. It tastes better.
There you go. So all these emotions that we stored our whole lives are knots, right? If we can relax our body, if we can allow these emotions to come up and experience them, what happens is not only do we start feeling better and releasing the stuff inside of us, but our potential expands. And you talk about this potential capability. It literally expands your capacity to handle life, and your potential will move out like this. What I'm really trying to say is we in the performative world, achiever world, I'm an achiever, right? And I'm maybe starting to wean off of that need, right? But we try to use performance to achieve everything. We use our mind to achieve what we think we need to feel better because we're not okay on the inside. Why do you think I needed awards? Because I wasn't okay. I needed validation. I needed someone to love me, right? So I wanted awards. Meaning I try to force myself to these states to achieve stuff. Well, if you're using performance, your capacity is limited. My capacity is like this mug. I'm holding a mug up. My energy and my capacity is only limited to this mug. I'm trying to pump my energy up to a certain level and achieve. It's limited. So anything over that overflows and I become overwhelmed and can't handle life's voltage. But if you use this technique of leaning into these trapped emotions, releasing them, your capacity to handle life expands, your potential, meaning you don't force yourself to feel courageous or confident. You embody those things. You don't force yourself, right, to perform. You are you already have that in you. So instead of forcing yourself to achieve these things and have these skills and qualities, you embody them. You hold them in your being. Like you see how grounded and certain I am. It's not because I'm lying to you and like forcing myself to manipulate through NLP and like persuade you like the mind, like that's performance. I embody these.
Yeah.
I know these things to be true. That's why I'm speaking like this because I've
authenticity,
expanded, right? And so we all have that ability to expand our potential through accessing these.
I absolutely love that. And I do think our capabilities expand upon becoming more authentic and living in our purpose. I think what we're talking about is that core person that we're designed to be, our unique self.
Yeah.
I think once we find that purpose and we begin to act as our authentic self, we become a part of a greater picture, but detailed within ourselves, right? The analogy I like to use is like a painting, right? You could be assigned in life, your purpose is the color black. And the color black is what I love. It's what I know. It's what I do. It's what I live. I wanted to be the color black. I wanted to use it from the time I was born, but I was told black's disgusting. That's not a good color to use when I draw, right? So I could sit there and scribble and draw in every other color to get people to like what I'm putting on paper, only to realize that once I started to use the color black, without shame, and embrace it and sit there and draw and shade and do all those things and then become the observer, I can step back and see that amongst all the people that were standing at that canvas, mine was the pupil of the Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And everybody else had their own place on that painting that belonged to them. But the painting doesn't exist without everybody doing what they are made to do, living their purposeful life, that authentic life. And it allows you to fit into that puzzle beautifully. Not with bent corners or trying to be an edge, right? Actually getting to your place, finding your frequency, your friends. It'll all link arm in arm, right? It's like a radio dial across the line, right? Everybody's at each one. Some can hear someone that's close to the other, but they're all in the place they're supposed to be. Yeah. Sometimes you won't be standing with people on 95.5. And as you grow, you might be at 102.1, right? And you'll be in the same room. As you work on yourself, you're no longer hearing the other stations.
Yeah,
you're aware they exist. You know what they are, but you've decided this is the station I prefer. This is the one that gives me the most clarity. This is my NPR, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
But I think that you have the ability to live that purposeful life when you embrace your authenticity.
That's me.
Right? We know who we are.
I love that.
We really do.
Get it. I love that. That black, that's, and isn't it funny how you as your rope right off the bat knew black was your thing. And then society likes, their voices come in and we don't blame them, but we start listening to those voices, those radio stations, we become clouded. Our programming is just voices and other people's voices, society, collective media, parents, not to blame them because we're the ones listening to them, but it's swirling in our head. But underneath that, if you get quiet, you hear your voice, you hear black is my thing. It's just then we step out into the world and we're like, oh my gosh, we try to conform to that voice. So all of us have this ability to just take all the voices out of your head. Don't take them through force, but those voices, right, are what preventing you from being your black or being in your frequency because you're listening to all the outside noise. That's what we say when don't listen to other people. It's not don't listen to their advice on a podcast. It's don't listen to their voice when you're in your room and you know what you want to work on, but someone's saying you should do this instead. This will make you money, right? All this BS that's swirling. Listen to your core voice that always told you black was your thing. Isn't that beautiful? How we have to spend 40 years of our life to unravel all the stuff that we knew right away.
Ain't that the truth? Right? And I took the big 64 Crayola box of BS and scribbled all over my paper for a long effing time. I tried to be magenta. I tried to be fucking brick red. You name it. I was pulling out the weirdest colors in there just so you would like me in that moment. Yep. Or I would try to paint a picture in my section so that other people would be like, dude, that is beautiful.
Yep.
Right? And just constantly try to do that and rotate it out and peel another layer off and try another one because none of those fulfill you.
Right.
You can paint a million pictures from somebody else's eyes, right? With their expectations, but you only paint one of your own, right? If you are painting with the expectations of others or looking over your shoulder at the faces that they're making while you're doing it, the painting's not yours.
Right. Right.
It's theirs or it's influenced by them.
Yeah.
Right? Don't look back. Paint your own picture.
Yeah. We're doing it because the knot in the rope, we don't want that rope to be felt, that knot, because it's so uncomfortable that we need someone to like us for us to feel happy. But if those knots are untied, we don't need other people to like us because we already feel good inside, untainted. So the reason we want that person to like our painting is because we're not okay on the inside. That's a profound realization that I had to accept. I'm not okay on the inside. That's why I need money, people to like me, awards. And there's nothing wrong with achieving.
It did all these things. I laugh because all those hurdles.
So I want to be okay on the inside so I can be free and I can paint it black, like the famous song.
Oh, great
song. My wife loves that song.
It's an amazing song.
Yeah.
Now you got to tell her the analogy. It'll have a whole new meaning.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I love this black. People need to listen that over and over. It's beautiful because it's so true. It's so true. But we are masquerading in this world, and we all do this, by the way. There's no judgment. But the reason you want all the stuff in this world that's outside of you is because you're not okay on the inside. All the reasons you want to achieve and all this stuff. So let's free ourselves from those knots, from those suppressed emotions so that we can be okay and confident and authentic naturally, because we don't got any knots that are poking us or preventing us. We're good.
Be a kid.
Yes.
Legit, be a kid. Kids are the best at calling reality's bullshit.
Yeah.
They will ask, why are we doing X over and over again? And then you've got to go, well, because for 5,000 years we've done X. I realize it doesn't mean shit. You realize it doesn't mean shit. We're all going to pretend it means shit, right? And they call this stuff out all the time. Kids are extremely aware. And they also are the first ones that we try to put a blanket over with our own insecurities, right? We try to tell them what they should fear based on what we feared. Yeah. And we instill or install future issues, right? Core wounds, all these things when we're trying to simply protect, right?
Yeah.
We're putting in that base level programming, right? You can only build the unit, and then after that, it's software, right? So that hardware is being installed. And I'm at this crossroads now where I wonder, how do I raise a child now that I understand that we all have to, have a persona that operates in today's society, a character to some degree, because you're not going to get through certain interviews or financial scenarios, or you have to show up and play the game shows, right? To spin the wheel of life at Chuck's Wheel-O-Rama, whatever, right? You're spinning all these things and you're going through them, but you don't need to get any kind of fulfillment out of them. That you are pure the way you are. You're perfect in your own right. And that's something that you're maintaining outside of self, that is just a requirement based on how we're living as a species, right? I want my son to be aware that he exists with and without, in and outside at the same time. And that he is in control of that. And that when he meets somebody that screams in his face or tells him he's a horrible person or tries to stretch and hurt all of his core beliefs about self, that person is in fact only putting out a mirrored self onto you. I want a child that'll be able to look at someone that says, hey, you moron or whatever, you bucktooth idiot, to look at them and be like, holy crap, that's sad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, this person has something that has made them so upset that they need me to feel pain,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is not intrinsic to the human experience. To go around stabbing people because you hurt, right? And if I can get him to understand that and see that there's the ability to allow people to feel without taking on their feeling, right? And placing that barrier where you can be empathetic, you can reach through it, but you don't let their emotion through. You recognize it for what it is. I like to use a straitjacket, right? I say, I look at people, and if everybody were walking this planet in a straitjacket and someone decided to scream at me, would I be upset or take offense to what they're saying? No, they're a straitjacket, right? If I go into life with the understanding that everybody is a bit insane or playing make-believe or doesn't understand their reality, then how can I take offense to what the hell they're spewing at me? It should be like them throwing crumpled paper thinking they're rocks. You know, and you can let them believe they're rocks. Oh, you know, whatever, like you do with kids, if that's what they need for the moment. But just know they're throwing wads of paper at you, right? They're the ones that need the release, not you. You don't have to take on the weight of their stones. I'm on fire today.
Yeah. Well, your analogies are great. And having a mental understanding of this is very important, right? If you do get hit with that piece of paper and you feel inside, that's normal too. And just allow that feeling to happen, knowing that what they're throwing at you is them. It's their own projection. Their I'm not okay of the world. About your son, he will be that way. He will have the tools because you've already embodied them and done the work. Like it's very clear, right?
You do get a toolbox to pass on if you have that beautiful opportunity. A lot of us collect our tools through life, but if you have that box, you can issue it at day one. That's a new level of understanding. That's like journeyman to like master, whatever.
And it's not even a toolbox. It's your embodiment. That you are, like I said, you are those things. That's why I teach embodiment now is I'm a parent of 3 daughters. I don't like the old way is talking at your kids and lecturing them right and wrong. And like, right. Being the example, not just in what to do, how to wash the dishes, but being authentic and anchored and understanding the world as you do. So when stuff throws at you, how you respond, when they scream at you as a toddler tantrums and how you respond, that is what will show them the way, not like talking at them. And so if you're embodied as a father and you're grounded and you're calm in the face of this, and you talk about your feelings and you apologize when you need to apologize and you're secure in yourself, then they will be too. They will have the toolbox installed in their being through watching you. You don't have to like hand it to them with your hands and like, here's a toolbox of life. That's what everyone's trying to do is here's your backpack. No, they can be that through your embodiment if you do the work. And it's clear like you've done it, Jay, right? But more conscious parents out there are listening to this. How can I do the same? If you do your inner work that we're talking about, your kinks through meditation, through whatever modality you want, or if you work with me and go the way I went, right? If you release your stuff out of the way and you expand your capacity and you embody these traits and qualities by breaking through shame, by breaking through apathy and all these things, then your child will too. That's how we do it. It's not through force of the child, but through our embodiment, they learn.
Live your authentic self and they will gain their own capabilities in your vision. right? Or through the vision of how you're taking on life. That's a beautiful way to raise children. I couldn't have had a child 20 years ago. I would have sucked. I would have been a horrible dude. I was living all the things that you are explaining. The fulfillment with material things, or, utilizing substances to cope, or, living in a shame spiral for past, issues. And I try to remember that not all people get that person to emulate. Right. They don't have that toolbox. They don't have anything passed on. And that breaks my heart. But at the same time, I think we as a society have to understand that we have a group of people within us that don't have the same opportunities as others, and become much more empathetic to those emotional outbursts that people have because they haven't been taught to self-regulate, or they were with a parent that was abusive, or have all these learned ways to interact with people that are not deemed societally acceptable, right? But that is their only method to communicate. That is their only method to interact with people. Until when? Until they learn and get a new tool or a new perspective, or you do something that gives them license to emulate you. Right? Or you act in your true self or purpose, so much so that somebody else says, fuck it, I'm going to do it too.
Right.
I'm going to try it that way because they look happy. Man, they feel good to be around. Or they're always there living the same way. There's something to be said about being a constant in somebody's life. And if you're the constant that is being authentic and purposeful, know that you are giving them a foundation with which to build their next layer on. Right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you've taken the time to pursue your authenticity, your purpose, and to be a good father and entrepreneur, but also reaching back, right? You're reaching back and bringing other people up to you in the race of life, right? If you give them the tools as you go by, they'll catch up to you, right? So why don't you take a moment, tell people what these tools are, what you can offer them so that they can come and, be able to have lunch with their lion, right? And sit down with you and learn how to live a purposeful and fulfilling life and not be crippled by anxiety and depression and things of that nature.
Yeah. So I help people overcome chronic anxiety, resistance, right? Blocks, not through the mind, but through the emotional root, right? So I have a program called Release. Everyone should start at the free guide. So releasepanic.com/free. Go there, download it, and just get started. But what I do is a 3-step process to release this stuff for good, to overcome and expand your potential, right? Literally. That rope needs to be relaxed, regulated. So I teach people how to have a fully regulated nervous system so that this tension can release these emotions and they can process out. That's a must. Like, that's mandatory. I teach people a very simple way to do that, to stay relaxed throughout their day.
Don't put tension on your rope.
Yeah. No, the rope cannot be tense because that's what's tension literally holds this stuff in our bodies. When you get angry, you tense up and you hold it in your body. You don't let it out. Like, you don't
just think about that.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, that's beautiful because if you have your hands pulling on either side of the rope, you're never going to be able to untie it.
No, it's got to be relaxed and loose.
And you've got to be able to let it go.
Yes. 100%. If you let go of the tension and the muscles in your body, if you let go of the control of your breathing, you will let go of your mind too, and you will regulate your nervous system, not through force, but your body knows what to do if you relax.
It's autonomic.
So I teach that because I struggled with that. The second step is unhooking from negative emotions. Every single time you feel something come up, I teach a process, very simple, to relax and to allow, how to focus on that, to process it out for good. So you're releasing and unkinking these knots naturally. And then the third thing is catalyst merging, which how do we release the big boulders, the big knots from our past without digging in the mind through therapy and all these harmful things, is how do we release that from our being? And that's a 3-step process that took me through all of this within a few weeks, and it helped others as well. So releasepanic.com/free. Get started there.
That's amazing. I can't thank you enough for being a part of the show and bringing your amazing story to my listeners or our listeners. Do know that you are being a lighthouse. I see you. I see you operating as you authentically are made to. And I think people are going to take cues from you. I think your children are in good hands. Much like you gave me those kind words, I want you to know that your kids are going to have a badass life. They're going to have a lot of fun, because once you recognize that authenticity is key, it's licensed to be the most ridiculous form of self, and money and situations come to you, not vice versa.
Right.
In fact, the pipe that's not clogged is the one that gets the flow, right? That's the same way with money. That's the same way with anything else that you need to accomplish your authentic life. And it doesn't mean you have to live in squalor, right? All those things are going to come through. And if you're utilizing those things to do your purpose, the rest will come in turn.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you. I want to thank you again for being on the show. And remember, everybody, be cool and keep learning. All right, bro.
Thank you so much.
Here.
Amazing.